Hello, happy Thursday. Allegra from Beyond Your Wildest Dreams going live at a later time because it turns out my audio wasn't on for the first 10 minutes and I have no idea why. But if you are listening to me live, thank you so much for the person who pointed that out to me so that I could go live again. Might as well try and recreate the magic. It was a really good podcast. Bummer that a third of it was lost. So redoing it. If you are listening to my podcast, this does go up as a recording to the Harness the Power of Planning podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts. And I'm so excited that you're here today. This is actually one of my favorite podcasts to do. I've done it a couple of times before, but I decided to re record it because something has changed for me. And this podcast is all about my end of year rituals that help me to sew up the old year in order to welcome in the new year with excitement and momentum and open arms. So that's what this is all about. If you are joining me live on Insta or YouTube or wherever, I do see the comments and I love interacting with y'all. So please feel free to comment. And if you're watching the recording, I also will see the comments and I will respond. Maybe not as timely, but I do respond to those because I love hearing what people say. And I learn from you too. So, that's super exciting. And so this episode is all about sewing up the new year, but I did want to do something new because of the fact that my podcast is now heard in 89 countries. That's right, 89 countries. And so I thought it would be fun to do a little bit of interesting facts about the countries where I am heard. And so the first country that I'm going to do is, surprisingly enough, the country that I get my second most listeners from, and that is currently Brazil. Hello, Brazil. Thank you so much for joining me, Brazil. Muito obrigado. And I hope I said that right because I don't speak Portuguese. But here are just a few interesting facts about Brazil. You can learn with me because I love to learn. It there are thoughts that human settlement in Brazil began at least 32,000 years ago. On January 1st, 1502, the first official tourist is recorded as having arrived in Brazil, and the bay where they landed was named Rio de Janeiro, which means Bay of January. Now you know. Brazil was ruled by the Portuguese for more than 500 years, which is why they speak Portuguese there and not Spanish, as many people assume. It's the fifth largest country in the world, and apparently Brazil has won the FIFA World Cup a record 5 times. So there's some interesting facts about Brazil. Thank you, Brazil, for supporting my podcast. And if you can, feel free to subscribe wherever you're listening, because that way you will find out when I am putting up my next recording. So thank you for joining me. Today, I'm going to talk about sewing up the new year to prepare Showing up the old year to prepare for the new, because as you know, I am a productivity and time management expert, and I'm all about helping you find more time and energy in your life, because who doesn't need more of that, right? And I always start my podcast by pulling a card from this little deck. I like the little bit of randomness that it provides to me. Now, I did already pull this because, as I mentioned, I had trouble recording my podcast at my usual time, so I did get to see this one already, but usually I don't get to see them in advance. And the saying is, always be on the lookout for the presence of wonder. E.B. White. Always be on the lookout for the presence of wonder. E.B. White. I believe E.B. White might have been the author of Charlotte's Web. Maybe one of you can tell me if that is correct. So I love this. And actually, this makes me think about an epiphany that I had recently, which is about having beginner's mind. And actually, it's a pop culture reference to Pirates of the Caribbean. So hold on for a second. Stay with me. Beginner's mind is an important philosophy in Buddhist thought. And the idea is that you need to approach life with a beginner's mind so that you can take in what you are exposed to. If you're If your brain is full, if your cup is full, if you think you already know everything, you're not going to learn new things. And I think we've all met that person who thinks they know everything. And when you talk to them, it's like they're not listening to you, right? And so my favorite pop culture embodiment of beginner's mind is Jack Sparrow from the Pirates of the Caribbean. Now, I've seen the Pirates of the Caribbean many times, partially because I have a kiddo, right? So all everything that's old is new again for me. I get to rewatch things because she's never seen them before. And one of these times that I was watching with her, I realized, "Oh my god, look at how Jack Sparrow goes through life." He is just playful and not judgmental and not complaining, right? That opening scene in the first Pirates of the Caribbean, I love it so much. He's sailing in on a ship that is sinking, and he's not stressing. He's not bailing water. He's not trying to get the sails to work. He's just looking very captain-like as it sails into port, and then it comes into port, and it's perfect timing because the boat finishes sinking as he pulls up to the dock, and he just steps out onto the dock like it was all planned. And then he runs into a man who says, "What's your name? What's the boat? And pay me £3." And Jack Sparrow does his like look around like, "What? The boat? The boat that's not there anymore?" But he doesn't complain. He just said, "How about I make it £5?" And we forget the name. And the guy takes his offer, and then he walks up the gangplank a little bit more, and there's a desk with a little sack of gold, and he picks it up like, "Oh, thank you, universe, for gifting me the gold that I just paid that guy." Have you ever had a time where you've thought to yourself, "I don't know how I'm gonna pay for this." But if you don't stress about it, I've always found that the money shows up. And so I love watching Pirates of the Caribbean now because I just love studying that whole idea of beginner's mind. And that's the thing is lessons are everywhere, right? E.B. White here talking about always be on the lookout for the presence of wonder. I learned something about beginner's mind by watching Pirates of the Caribbean. That was not expected. But the more that I stay open to the universe, I find that the universe is constantly speaking to me, either through other people's mouths or through the books that I read or the podcasts I listen to or the random ideas that I have. And so when you stay in this beginner's mind and you're open to the wonder that is out there, a lot of times you find the very answer you were looking for. So thank you, E.B. White. So let me get into today's topic, which is about sewing up the new year. I decided to re record this podcast because I always had a 3-part ritual towards my end of year, but I've added a 4th part, which is why I am adding this in. However, if you want to go back and listen to my previous recordings of this, it's kind of interesting to hear, where I was when I recorded that versus where I am now. If you are new to my podcast, the Harness the Power of Planning podcast has been around for about 8 years. It had a different name. There were a couple years there where I did nothing, but some of my early podcasts are from, I think my first podcast might have been just like December 2017, right? Just this time, but 8 years ago. So give it a listen. It's kind of interesting. I am all dressed up for the holidays. If you're watching the video, you can see I have my cute ugly sweater on, and it has bells on it, so that's that noise. And I have my little Christmas baubles on that I've owned these earrings for since I was a teenager, so over 30 years. And I just love this time of year. And I love it so much that I used to get depressed right around this time because I knew that Christmas was coming. That's when my family celebrates Christmas. I knew that Christmas was coming, and I would get depressed in anticipation of Christmas being over. Like, how sad is that? Or you're so excited about something that you're depressed that it's going to be over soon. Like, that is just, such a mind game. I often say in my trainings that I do, life is a game played on a field that starts here and ends here. Like I was just messing with myself by getting depressed like that. And so I found that by coming up with rituals for my end of year, it helped me to get excited about the new year so that I could not be depressed, basically. And so my first practice is mending my wool. Now, I came up with this practice because around this time of year is when I start breaking out my sweaters. And no matter what I do, my sweaters always seem to have moth holes in them. Like, what purpose do moths play in the ecosystem? I need to know because I really have a lot of anger towards them because they're always messing up my clothes. And I around this time of year, I'd break them out, and so I'd have to repair the moth holes. And so I found that there was something nice about doing all the repairs before the new year so that when January came, which where I live, January is often the coldest month of the year, I wouldn't have to be repairing anymore. I'd be done with that. And I just found that to be very liberating to not be repairing moth holes in the new year. So, my question to you is what is there in your life that you can repair or finish or do away with in order to be liberated in the new year? Look around your apartment or your house. Like, is there a piece of pottery that you need to fix? Like, I don't know, broken coffee mugs. I feel like there are broken coffee mugs year round, right? So, do you have one that you love that instead of throwing it away, you've been meaning to fix it? Do that now. And if you do have pottery or ceramics to fix, I highly recommend you look into a technique called kintsugi, which is a Japanese practice of mixing in some gold into the resin that you use as a way to celebrate the new beauty that that flaw has created. You know, it's a metaphor for life. We are more beautiful because of our trials and tribulations. So, is there something that you can fix, or is there a task that has been dragging on in 2025 that you just want to release for the new year? Complete that task. Maybe it's a remodel. Maybe it's some paperwork you have to do. Maybe it's a piece of trim that you have not restapled or something that needs to be cleaned. Do it in order to make space. These things that are undone carry a mental weight. In fact, in my planner, I have a page that is dedicated to home improvement projects that cost over $5,000 because there are a number of them. And there's so many of them that the total dollar amount adds up to a dollar amount greater than what I want to spend on home improvement. But by putting $5,000, it's like, okay, I can knock them off as I go. And the reason I bring this up is that I have a friend who every time I speak to him, he mentions something that he needs to do to his house, but it's something that he knows he's not going to get to for about 4 months. And it's like he's using our conversation as his to-do list. And I said to him, "Hey, this is the third time you've mentioned it. Do you have a planner where you could write down these things that you have to do around your house so that you're not starting every conversation with that? Because that is energy, right? Some people think that thoughts aren't energy, and so I guess that's the lie they tell themselves in order to keep running through these things in their head, but it's energy. So write it down, and better yet, use this time of the year to be done with those things so that you're not weighed down by them as you enter the new year. So that's step number 1. You know, wrap up or fix or complete things that have been holding you back or weighing on you. Number 2 is I set up my planner. And I have to start setting up my planner earlier than December because I get booked for speaking engagements and trainings 18 months in advance. And I don't have the luxury of buying a dated planner because the planner for the year that I need to make notes in doesn't exist yet. So I always have to get an undated one, which is fine. So I do things like put on these tabs for the month, but I like to spend the time between Christmas and New Year's making sure that this is fully set up. So again, that's something that's just off my list. I know that it's done. And if you've taken my Harness the Power of Planning course, then you know, like one of the steps of setting up a planner, for instance, is going through and writing down all the dates that don't change, such as birthdays and anniversaries and taxes and, anything that you do regularly. I make sure it's all in there, and that way I can just start January 1st knowing that my planner is ready to I can if there's a date that's available, I can book that date for something, or I can plan to meet a friend or whatever. I know that it's all set up and ready. Like right now, I have some things written in August, but not all the dates are written in August. So I'll go through, I'll write in all the dates, I'll do all that final setup. And if you don't have a paper planner, I highly, highly recommend that you get one. There is so much brain science about how much more you hold on to information when you write it, because we write slowly, and when you're writing slowly, it gives your brain time to get that information into your brain versus typing. I type over 160 words a minute. My brain can't really keep up, so it doesn't hold on to that information the same way. The same brain science also shows that like goals that take longer to accomplish are more memorable, and I would even say more satisfying in a lot of ways than things that happen quickly, because you remember them. When you've had to work on something for years, it's just more memorable. So, for instance, I actually accomplished a goal in 2025. And by the way, my podcast is evergreen. I'll probably going to reuse this, so it could be any year, but this year I accomplished a goal that I have been working on for 6 years. And that was producing a stand-up comedy show called Soy Saucy, featuring all Asian Latin comedians because I am Asian and Latin. And it's a group show, and I've produced it twice. It's been sold out both times. We actually had to move to a venue that was twice as large for the second show because the first venue was just too small. And I already have dates to produce it 2 more times in 2026. And because that is something that I've thought about for 6 years, the show itself is like a dream. When I am there watching the other comedians, because it's a group show, it is so amazing. It brings me to tears because I made something that I'd been thinking about for so long, and that when I first thought of it, I had no idea how I was gonna do this thing. I mean, when I first came up with the idea of producing a stand-up comedy show, I wasn't even performing stand-up comedy yet. So, that was amazing. So, when you take more time to do something, it gets into your brain better, and that is why having a paper planner is so powerful for working on your goals, whatever they might be. So, that is step number 2 of sewing up the new year, is getting my paper planner ready. The third part of getting ready for the new year is just pure fun. I am a big food person, and many, many years ago, over a decade, maybe even longer, I was on my elliptical machine, watching Create TV when Martha Stewart came on and made the most gorgeous cinnamon pastry I'd ever seen in my entire life. It looked like a snowflake, and it had, of course, cinnamon and brown sugar, but also had cardamom and orange in it, and I could just imagine the aroma. And so I got the recipe and I started making it. And my husband said to me, "I have never heard you complain so much in all the years I've known you." And at that point, he'd known me for about 20 years. So that was saying something. And I had no idea how much work laminated pastry is. And laminated pastry is like croissant and baklava and Danish. It's where there's alternating layers of butter and dough, and butter and dough and butter and dough. And the way it gets like that is that you roll it out with a rolling pin, and then you fold it, and then you roll it out again, and you keep rolling and folding and rolling and folding until you get all of those layers. And it's a lot of work. And not just that, but there's a reason why this kind of pastry is made in cold weather places, because in places where I live, like Southern California, the butter can melt away before you can roll it into the dough. So you have to keep putting it in the refrigerator and taking it back out, which makes the dough even harder to roll. So it's a process. However, The first time I tasted this pastry, it was mind-blowing. It made me realize that I have never had good pastry before in my entire life. It was so different. It was transcendent. And so, because I liked it so much, I was like, "Well, I wanna make this again, but man, it's a lot of work." Fortunately, my family also love it, so they help out with the rolling now because they appreciate it. But because it's so much work and because the outcome is so fun, I started doing it around the holidays, and then finally, I had the epiphany, "Hey, what if I did it around the new year so that I could be, quote, unquote, 'rolling in the dough'?" Right? So, my mom's side of the family is Asian, and in Chinese culture, we have this practice of using things that are symbolically like gold in order to welcome abundance into our lives. So, for instance, having an orange tree by your front door because oranges are like stand in symbolically for gold. So I love this feng shui idea of rolling in the dough. I don't know, it makes me laugh and it appeals to this Chinese culture side of me. And so that's when I do this Danish is for the new year. Now, I've found that you can actually make the dough a week before and let it sit in the fridge, and then I just do the rolling, like, the last 3 days. So I'll make the dough around, like, the 23rd or the 24th and just let it sit, and it actually makes the flavor of the pastry even better, and it kind of breaks up the whole process, so it's not as painful now. But then the fact that I'm working on it in this, like, lead up to the new year brings a sense of just fun and anticipation, and then on the new year, we have this tradition of watching a local parade that I love, the Rose Parade, and that's been something we've done for a long time. We enjoy the Rose Parade a lot, and so we incorporated the cinnamon Danish into that. So I wake up early, I turn on the oven, the cinnamon Danish has been proofing overnight, which means that it's just been sitting out, rising to its full potential. It's covered with another baking pan, so nothing can get on it or anything, but it's just rising to its full potential, and then I slip it in, and my husband and daughter get to wake up to the aroma of the cardamom, cinnamon, sugar, orange amazingness, and then we get to enjoy the Rose Parade while devouring this delicious thing. So my question for you is there a project or a recipe or an event that you can do that kind of heightens the anticipation for the new year and gets you excited about what's to come? Maybe you go see a show or you go do a historical dance, which is something I love to do, or you get together with friends for a potluck. One thing that I did a couple times when my kiddo was younger, we would invite people over. I would make this cinnamon Danish. I would have to make 2 of them because there'd be people coming over, and we would just have a bicycle and skateboarding riding on the street in front of us. We'd block off the block with cones, and people would bring out cocktails or mimosas, whatever. I'd bring out the Danish, and people would just the kids would just, like, have a play date on New Year's, and that was a really, really fun way to usher in the new year too. So, what can you do that makes you excited about the new year? That's my 3rd tip for, sewing up the old and getting into the new. The making of the Danish for me, it acts like a bridge between the 2 years because it's something that I'm doing in the old year that's getting me excited about the new year, and that's really, really fun. My 4th thing, and this is something that I've been doing for a couple years, but I hadn't really thought about it as a ritual, but it's become a ritual, is that I look back on all the books I've read in the past year. And because I mostly listen to audiobooks or I use my accessibility on my phone to read ebooks to me so they become like audiobooks, they're all in one place. So it's easy for me to look at the titles and the authors. And the thing that I love to do that is because, you only take in the brain science shows you only take in about 10% of the information that you consume. We just our memories aren't that great that we can hold on to everything. And so when I read something that resonates with me, I make a point of rereading it because I want more than the 10% of that information. And if I really love something, I'll read it a couple times. So what's great about going back over the list is that it reminds me, "Oh, that was a great book. I wanna reread, re-listen to that book." And at this point, I've read about 110 books, which is 100 is a typical number for me from year to year, but there are definitely some that I'm gonna reread, like, Tony Horvitz's Spying on the South was really fascinating. I read a lot of history books, specifically American and European history, because I did that in order to help understand I wanted to understand why we are where we are at this moment in time, and that's been really, really helpful to me. But going back and making a note of the things that I might wanna reread, and I read everything, fiction, nonfiction, as I said at the top of the show, you never know where you're gonna get your lessons. It could be from Jack Sparrow in Pirates of the Caribbean. When you read fiction, it's probably based in someone's truth. You might not know whose truth it is, but, you know, often the weirdest parts of books, I believe, are the truest because that's the kind of stuff you can't make up. But going back and looking at the books that you've read so you could remind yourself, "Oh, that was really interesting. I wanna reread that book," I think is a really powerful task and a great way to, start using your planner, making a note of the books that you wanna read in the coming year. So thank you so much for joining me. Be sure to like and subscribe wherever you listen. That way you'll find out when I drop a new podcast. And if planning for the new year is something that you want to take a little bit more seriously, I wanted to tell you about a new mini course that I have called Start Fresh Today. And it's designed to be done any time of the year because there's a lot of brain science behind the idea of fresh starts. And you can find out more about that if you go to my website, bywdreams.com. The very first video on the top is the first video for this course, which is just some brain science based learning tips to help you get the most out of the mini course. The mini course is just 2 sessions, they're less than 45 minutes. So it's really short. But this before you start course, this before you start video is designed to help you actually maximize those. I've often been told by people when I speak that I'm the first person who's ever told them some of these tips for, taking notes and implementing what you learn so that you actually acquire that skill rather than just, you know, watching the trainer, reading the book, but not actually using any of those skills. And so I think that's really important because I do want to help you make a change, whatever change you want to make in your life. And so I provide you with these skills. So my gift to you is this first video of the fresh Start Fresh Today. And again, you can find it at bywdreams.com. It was also I don't know if it was last week's podcast or the week before, but it's called Sneak Peek. Check it out. Give it a listen. And if you want to join me with Start Fresh Today, go to tinyurl.com/SFTALEGRE and join me for that mini course. It's recorded, so you can do it at your leisure. And as I said, it's just 2 sessions, less than 45 minutes. And also, if you think you're going to have questions, I do have an add on that you can do for monthly coaching calls for one. If you have questions, you can ask me them live. Those won't be recorded because everyone's going to be starting at different times. So really it's just an opportunity for you to get your questions answered. So you can do that at that same website, tinyurl.com/SFTALEGRE, because, there's a saying, the best time to start something was yesterday. And the second best time to start something is today. And look, you don't have to start the thing today. Like if it's get healthier or get a promotion or apply to school, you don't have to do that thing today. But maybe the mini course is the step before the step that is going to help you move towards doing the thing that you want to do. As always, thank you so much for joining me. Remember, planning makes everything easier. And no matter what day of the week it is, happy, fresh start because every day is an opportunity to start again.